He's pulling this out of his ass because this is not the cause of this, and it is a way of distracting from all the other stuff that you're talking about, climate change.
Sam Seder and Emma Vigeland of The Majority Report take a look at a Tucker Carlson clip where basically they're sort of drumming this right-wing viewpoint that somehow the Democratic Party and the Democrats in charge of the city and the state are responsible for the wildfires, and that if it had been under Republican control, that the wildfires wouldn't have happened. And it's fairly infuriating stuff. I'm going to have some opinions to add in as we go, and then I want to know what you think in the comments, but let's check it out.
He's on Tucker Carlson show. I got to be honest, I wasn't fully aware that Tucker still had a show.
It's on X, the video streaming platform.
He gets, I'm sure he gets a lot of right wing views, but he doesn't have the same salience as he did in our culture back when he was on Fox. That was to be expected.
The machine makes the man, not the other way around. Sorry,
there
Tucker.
You go. And here is we mentioned with Heather that there is an attempt when you have these type of huge catastrophes that are a function of climate change and the dynamic between the changing weather and how we've built our society, where and how we've built our society. And in LA, you've had virtually no rain for almost a year. And you had 70 to 100-mile wind gusts that were going on, and it just made it impossible to contain these fires. And this is a function of climate change. Everyone who studies this agrees, but the right wants to make it about competence. Even though you have firefighters who say we could have had 1,000 other firemen, it wouldn't have made a difference. They want to make it about who may have set the fires. This
DEI.
is really in DEI.
Karen Bass is
immigrants.
Ghana. Yeah.
And, you even saw this in the context of North Carolina when there were unprecedented floods in areas that had not been flooded before, and roads washed away, towns were destroyed. They couldn't necessarily talk about the local officials in these North Carolina towns, so they made it about FEMA is coming in to take away your money, your business and your house, and et cetera, et cetera.
Oh, so it was the federal government that time.
It's always about trying to distract from the primary point, which is climate change is real. And this is how the right-wingers address this stuff.
But I didn't know that. So it was really clear to the people who run the city and the state that you had this combination of dry conditions and heavy winds, high winds.
Yeah, and because there's so many ignitions, because of really these two factors, mostly the electrical wires, brushing up against vegetation and triggering a fire. That's kind of one of the main ones. The other one is homeless people starting fires all over LA. Half of all fires put out by the.
Let's put up this graphic. Homeless people are starting fires in the map.
Second one. We looked this up, by the way, for sourcing because we just wanted to fact check this claim, and they get it from an LA Times study from 2021 that shows that around 54% of the fires responded to by the LAFD in that year were for fires that were set by homeless people. But as you can see, and Sam will say, where most unhoused people are concentrated is in downtown LA.
Now, and let's be clear, set by homeless people, all fires, well, I would say, all fires that happen within the context of like where people are living, generally in some fashion or another, are set by people, right? Like it's people who
it says it in the article. Caught fire, tents caught fire.
It's people who set up electrical lines. Occasionally you get a fire from a lightning bolt. But it's people who set up electrical lines. It is people who, drop cigarettes. It's people who have, forest, they campfires.
That's a really interesting point. Most fires are started by people.
And homeless people living downtown in L.A., undoubtedly, you have these small fires. They're trying to conflate these two things because there's no indication that deep in the woods in the Palisades, there's a homeless person living there setting a fire. Or that it was the fire that, to the extent that people have any ideas of what happened in Altadena, it was a transformer that blew. And it was an electrical fire. But you got to bring in the homeless thing, even though, granted, it's fire, but it's not, it's very unlikely the cause of these two major fires. But you got to bring it in because we got to do some work on this.
The LA Fire Department are started by homeless people. It's been that way for years.
Why do homeless people start fires?
Well, it turns out meth heads love to start fires. There's just every drug has its kind of weird.
The question is, why do homeless people like to start fires? Well, first of all, you've got a canister of kerosene and you're cooking your food, or you're in you got a candle because you don't have any batteries or a flashlight, and your tent catches on fire.
Or it can be cold. Some nights in LA, when there's no sun, it can get really low. I mean, in New York City, it gets even colder. And we know that here, there are fires that are sometimes started by unhoused folks. But the conditions aren't the same as in Los Angeles.
Just decrepit and gross. And look at how they jump. Why do they like to start fires? Not fires started by homeless people, the vast majority of which we have every reason to believe was accidental. Just like fires that were set in, you have low-income fires in this city generally happen in low-income situations because there's a lack of heat. We're going to use the stove for heat, or we got to put in a electric heater. Those are more prone to catching fire.
Right. I mean, if it's blame the poor, blame the homeless, it somehow there's this moral subtext of like, well, because they're poor and they're homeless or whatever, they're anti-society and they start these fires to destroy the homes of the rich, right? It's crazy. It's crazy. But so you blame it then on the Democratic lawmakers. Like, well, they love the homeless problem. They love the meth problem, right? They're not doing anything to fix it, so they love it. Well, of course, that's not true.
Or the electrical system is bad in a building. But and then Shellenberger's first response is to talk about meth heads. I mean, is he suggesting that these are synonymous? That all homeless people, or the majority of homeless people,
they get
are
into
meth heads?
They get into it, yeah.
Okay, we can go back to
yeah, no, it's okay.
It turns out meth heads love to start fires. There's just every drug has its kind of weird element to it, but meth heads love starting fires. They love destroying things. Like meth is like the drug of nihilism. So it's like perfect drug for LA and California at the moment.
So these are not cooking fires.
They could be cooking fires.
But starting fires to destroy things.
Yeah. For sure.
Meth addiction.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But it's not evil or anything.
No, totally fine. Yeah. What could go wrong?
But isn't classically starting fires and torturing animals, aren't those like signs of sociopathic behavior?
Yeah. I mean, for sure. I mean, look, meth makes you makes you psychopathic. It makes you psychotic. It's meth-induced psychosis. But I mean, yeah, and all the crazy. I mean, people behave. I mean, things that people do on meth. I mean, it is like. It's like they behave with like superhuman crazy powers, the levels of violence, the
They're
assault,
super soldiers.
When you interview people,
you are having an emotional
recovery
breakdown
that describe being on meth. I mean, they're just awake for like weeks at a time. Like it's not even clear how they.
You can't even make an argument anymore, can you?
So that's just that madness has continued, and Mayor Bass.
Pause it. I just want to remind you how quickly they skipped over the idea of an electrical transformer catching on fire, which we know was the cause of the 2018 massive wildfires. And we know this happens over and over again, and we may very well find out it's the same thing with Altadena. Like, think about how much time they dedicated to psychoanalyzing all the meth homeless people who clearly on purpose light fires where there's zero evidence that the two most major fires were set on purpose or were from meth heads or from homeless people or from even people at this point.
We'll see. I mean, one of the fires, I think Heather said maybe they think may have been started by somebody.
Out in the woods in Pasadena. In the Palisades.
But do you see how far he goes? He immediately jumps to meth heads. So apparently most of these fires are being started by meth heads. I thought he was going to go in the sense of like, if you're going to use heroin, you may cook it with a lighter. But then that would preclude everybody who smokes outside. If you smoke cigarettes, right, that's not included in this analysis. If you smoke cigarettes and drop it on the ground and it's still lit, like, wouldn't that be in a similar amount of fire that homeless people would be using to cook? No, it can't be that, because that would be rational. It has to be that they're meth heads who are so deranged. They're barely human, honestly, which means we can justify whatever we want to do to them. They're like super soldiers that stay up all day on meth, and they're nihilists trying to cause chaos, burning everything. That's what he's saying.
Michael Shellenberger knows that the best defense is a good offense, because Michael Shellenberger is exactly the type of liar who has been snowing people on this issue for decades and decades and decades. That's why Elon Musk picked him to be one of his journalists covering the Twitter files. More recently, Shellenberger wrote an article where he suggested that while climate change is happening, it's just not the end of the world and not even our most serious environmental problem. His entire bit is doing this balancing act between climate change is real, but actually capitalists and the people in power and fossil fuel companies, we don't actually need to do about them. We actually need to listen to them to how we solve it. He's a liar. And
he is not saying don't look at climate change, don't look at the fossil fuel executives, don't look up. Let's punch down at the people who are really the least powerful in society. They don't even have a family member that they can stay with, right? In many instances. Some of these folks are on the street. Some of them I know are experiencing mental health episodes. But the reality is they should be in housing. That might make it so that they could have heat.
Yeah, how do you solve drug addiction and homelessness? Is it with cops?
Yes.
In 2020, incidentally, it was a gender reveal party that started a massive El Dorado fire.
Right.
Wow, that sounds like meth head nihilism.
But again,
to me.
like, why is this stuff kindling all of a sudden? Like, it's not like homeless people started fires like the last couple of years. It's because massive droughts getting more and more regular because of climate change. The exact same thing that Schellenberg has been downplaying.
He's pulling this out of his ass because this is not the cause of this, and it is a way of distracting from all the other stuff that you're talking about, climate change. It's right-wing talking points, just to basically, reinforce a completely distinct phenomena. And do we have any more? Do we need to even watch?
That's really basically it, I think, based on what I saw. It's unfortunate because it seems like this is the kind of thing that a lot of other media outlets are leaning into. Fox News.
Yeah, I think it's just another example of the take every opportunity to blame the left and justify themselves and normalize the right and what is happening in our government and ignoring the hypocrisy. I saw somebody on another clip say that hypocrisy is the compliment that vice pays to virtue. And this idea that they're talking about it as normal while at the same time completely ignoring the blatant malfeasance of the current administration illustrates that they know it is wrong, right? Why bother to make it sound normal, to talk as though you're normal and moral and righteous, if you don't realize what you're doing is wrong? So hypocrisy is the compliment that vice pays to virtue. Well, let me know what you think in the comments.